This is Optimal Startup Daily, episode 656, The Lazy Man's Guide to Starting a Successful Online Business, Part 2, by Steve Chou of mywifequitherjob.com. And I'm Dan. Welcome to Optimal Startup Daily, where I read to you every single day from some of the best blogs on entrepreneurship. And if you were with me yesterday, you heard part 1 of this post, and we're going to do part 2 right now. So if you haven't listened to the first half yet, I would recommend going back and doing that. But if you're all caught up, let's get right to part 2 and continue optimizing your life. The Lazy Man's Guide to Starting a Successful Online Business, Part 2, by Steve Chou of mywifequitherjob.com. Every year, I tell myself that I'm going to try 1 to 2 brand new strategies and let it ride. This makes running my businesses much more enjoyable and provides me with the mental strength I need to maintain consistency. Think about it this way. If I were to constantly miss my goals, then I would probably feel inadequate and start to resent my business. If I were to constantly hit my goals, then I would probably get more aggressive and stress myself out. Most people will strongly disagree with this mindset, but from the perspective of a lazy person, this mentality keeps me going day in and day out. Don't worry about problems until they arise. Way back in 2011, when I decided to launch my Create a Profitable Online Store course, my main concern was my ability to support my students. So I called up Ramit Sethi from I Will Teach You to Be Rich, and here's what he said to me. Quote, "Dude, you are such an engineer. Why are you worrying about something before it's even happened? Focus on getting customers first, and then adjust appropriately if you are overwhelmed." End quote. Guess what? I've sold my course to thousands of students over the years, and I still have plenty of bandwidth for support. It was never an issue, and I'm glad that it didn't prevent me from taking action. A lot of people email me on a daily basis anticipating all of the potential problems with their e-commerce business. Steve, what if I get too many sales to fulfill myself? Steve, what if I get too many phone calls? Steve, what if competitors copy my products? Steve, what if Amazon is too saturated? Steve, what if the world ends tomorrow? But in the grand scheme of things, 99.9% of these problems are not a big deal. If you're on the sidelines worrying about unrealistic doomsday scenarios, then stop. What's the worst thing that can happen? You might make less than you think? You might lose a little bit of money, but gain a ton of knowledge in the process? Sounds like a pretty good trade-off to me. Don't play the what-if game. Don't worry about automating everything. Automation is cool, but there's a subset of people out there who obsess over it. Quote, "I don't want to launch anything unless everything is taken care of. I want a computer to do all the heavy lifting while I sit back and drink fruity girly drinks by the pool." End quote. If you have this mentality, then you'll never get started. In all of my years of being a hardware engineer, the most important concept that I've learned is the KISS principle. Keep it simple, stupid. Here's a little secret about me. I love automation, but I never devote time to automating anything until it gets so painful that I must take action. Here's a dumb example. To this day, I still process delinquent payment plan customers by hand. Now, I could write a piece of code to automate this process, but I simply don't get enough of these cases to warrant any action. I've got other more important priorities, like going to Girl Scout brownie troop meetings. Moral of the story? Keep things simple and just get the thing out the door. Don't be afraid to ask dumb questions. Those of you who listen to my podcast know that I ask lots of dumb questions to my guests. Sometimes I know the answers to these questions before I ask them, but I ask them anyway, even if I come across as an idiot. Why? It's because sometimes I get unexpected answers which completely change my way of thinking. Here's an example. During my interview with Kyle Taylor, I asked a bunch of basic questions about how he runs his email marketing campaigns. And in the back of my mind, I thought I knew all the tricks of the trade since 90% of my revenues are from email. But because I asked a few silly questions to dig deeper into his flow, I discovered one little tidbit that has fundamentally changed how I send emails forever. Being lazy is okay, but don't do this. Especially if you're a lazy person at heart like I am, I hope these tips will help you get off your butt and take action. But I also want to leave you with one last piece of advice that has greatly helped me during my entrepreneurship journey. Try as hard as you can to force yourself to stop complaining and don't make excuses. No one likes a complainer, and people will be less likely to help you if you do. When the chips are down, try not to feel bad about yourself. Don't throw yourself a pity party when things don't go your way. Instead, take a deep breath and think about how you're going to get yourself out of your hole, and the rest will take care of itself. Good luck. You just listened to part 2 of the post titled The Lazy Man's Guide to Starting a Successful Online Business by Steve Chou of mywifequitherjob.com. And thanks again to Steve. One thing I didn't mention yesterday is that he also started his own podcast, which he mentioned in this post, and it's called the My Wife Quit Her Job podcast with Steve Chou. It's all about entrepreneurs who quit their jobs to start successful online businesses. Through a series of personal interviews, Steve uncovers the exact strategies that led to their success. And again, it's called the My Wife Quit Her Job podcast with Steve Chou, and you can find it wherever you get your podcasts. But that does it for today here on Optimal Startup Daily. I thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you in tomorrow's show, where your optimal life awaits.